Hi, here's some nice little Photoshop tricks that you probably didn't know about that are useful for 3D texturing and pretty much anything really. So I've got here just a 1024 by 1024 image, which is a nice texture size, right? Good kind of medium to low resolution. But it's good for things like making alphas or tileable textures and things like that. Okay, so what I've got is my background layer, and I'm just going to basically unlock it to start with. Now, unlocking that background layer now lets you treat it like a normal layer, right? You can do whatever you want with this layer now, and it won't complain about anything. So another thing you can do to duplicate a layer, you just drag this down to the plus and it'll make a copy of it. If you shift click each layer and drag them into a folder, you can put them into a group. You can duplicate the group and you can merge the group by right clicking on it, so merge group, and that kind of rasterizes or merges these two layers, and you keep a hold of the group. Now that's handy if you've got a workflow where you want to go back to something that you've merged things together for certain reasons like blend modes and things like that. But there's nothing that stops you doing something interesting, right? So I'm just going to delete all of these. Now it doesn't let me delete them all, I have to keep one of them. So what I'll do is I'll just get rid of the group. Let's say I want to clear this document. I can actually do delete like that, and delete, sorry, not the document but the layer. I can just delete everything on it. But I can also basically do Control L and bring this up and everything will go white, or this down and everything will go black. Now I want everything black because I want to show you a nice little technique here. So we've got a black image and I want to do something, right? So I'm going to add a layer above and I'm going to paint with red, right? I'm going to paint with red on this layer, right? And I'm going to go to a layer above again and I'm going to change this to green, okay? And I'm going to paint with green. So I've got these two different layers and two different coloured filled drawn areas, and I'm going to change one of these to add, and you can see what happens is this part becomes additive and this part's normal. Okay, I'm just going to add one more layer, and what I can do now is use the smudge tool and sample all layers, right? And I can actually now smear between these two layers, right, and still keeping in mind their mode, because all it really sees below this is the two colours. And this is handy for fixing up areas that have got different blend modes, like maybe you've got some kind of additive glow effect or something and you don't want to affect the actual layer. What's actually happening here is this layer is sampling what's going on and just basically mimicking what it should be doing, right? But that's all contained in that one layer. See that? So it's kind of just picking up what it should be doing, but transferring all that data into this layer so you can make cool changes. So that's a nice little trick. So I'm going to put all these together. So I'll just shift and choose them all and just merge layers, and everything else also stays intact. So it's rasterized that. So that's a useful thing, because sometimes when you try to merge layers that have got two different blend modes, things might change a little bit like you saw there, but if you've got this in its own separate layer and I merge these together, you get very little change. Nothing really changes there because of the way it's sampled all the layers and calculated what it should look like. So that's handy. Another handy thing is the mask. So you can add a mask and paint black and white. This is kind of like using an eraser, right? Make sure you're using the brush there. And basically if you paint black, you're going to effectively erase parts of this, and if you paint in white you bring them back, because all the mask is doing is acting as a second calculation, if you like. If you paint in black, it basically says don't show anything. If you paint in white, it says show something. And this is really cool for a kind of non-destructive workflow, and you can make some silly things like that. You can draw in this layer. If you alt and click on it, you can see exactly what's happening. So it's black and white image. White is letting it show and black's not. So I'll just click back on the layer. So alt click will let you edit it, and just clicking here and clicking on it without alt will let you edit it without actually seeing it. So the alt click can be handy. Because you've got black and white here in the mask, you press X to shift between them. And you can also do like smudging and things like that through this layer and get some nice wacky effects. Right, none of this actually affects the original pixels. If I do shift and click, it actually disables the mask temporarily. I can shift and click again, bring it back, but nothing actually got changed here. So I can bring that back and I can click on this layer and do some smudging as well. Right, you can see how it's also smudging the mask, right? And let's say we don't want that. I'm just going to go back there and undo a few times. Oh, you got some weird red color. I don't know where that came from. Oh, well, it's back. Okay, so I'll undo a few times to get that back to where it was before I decided to smudge everything. Okay, right a bit there. So I can smudge the mask and this together, and that's because of this little link here. If I press shift and click on that link, or not shift, just clicking on the link will toggle it. Now that that's off, I can change this part. I tried to pull the mask a little bit there. I've never really seen that happen before. I'm going to turn off sample all layers. Yeah, you can see how that fixed that because it was also picking up some of this background color. Alright, so I can make changes to this part and that stays intact, and I can go here and I can make changes to this part and do some wacky stuff as well. Now another cool thing that's nice is Control U will let you bring up the color, hue changes, and saturation, and lightness and darkness, right? So you can change that. I'm going to cancel it there. You can actually also do that inside the mask. If you do Control U, it doesn't do anything because it's not any color in there, but if you do Control L, you can actually control the levels. Alright, like so. You can tighten up those black and white areas to the point of them being literally black and white. This is why this is so much contrast, because we don't have all this range anymore. We're kind of like pulling it into a zone in a smaller area. You can even brighten it and darken it, but I like this one because you can pull them around, and if you hold down, I think shift and control, no, I think it's just there's no way of controlling all three. I thought there was, but there's not. But yeah, you can pull these around, and you can also like change different colors and stuff and change the channel, and you can get it to do automatic things. Right, but I like to just pull these together, and what's happening here, if you alt click on the mask and do Control L, this is what's happening. So if you pull the black one up, anything that's darker, anything that's kind of dark toned is going to become darker. See that? Right, and then if I do the top one, anything that's lighter is going to become more lighter toned. So it's kind of like a cut off. So you can then use that to tighten up an area and just bring them down, and then have a nice image like that. There's also another trick you can do, but you can't do it directly in the mask, and it's filter Stylize Oil Paint. You see how it's grayed out here, but that's not the end of the world. We can Control A, Control C, and make a new layer, and Control Shift V to paste it into its own layer. And now if we go up to filter Stylize Oil Paint, we can get a nicer effect here. Right, we can soften some of these edges. I'm going to bring the stylization way up to just to show you what happens. So I've clicked that, and you can see if I do Control Z, Control Alt Z, Control Shift Z, actually Control Shift Z, that's what I've done, and then you can see how that looks different. Right, now I need to get this back into the mask, so Control A, Control X to get rid of it, Alt click on the mask, and Control Shift V to paste it in place. Now we've got a better looking mask. Right, and I want to kind of make my pattern look a bit nicer here, so I'll just use some of this, pulling it around. Make some nice effect. Make it look like I meant to make some kind of interesting logo or something like that. I'm just using the smudge brush. I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro, which I've had for a long time. It's not the Cintiq. I prefer to see the whole screen. I don't like to cover a screen up, so I get used to using this one. I have used the screen a few times, but I prefer this. So I'm just making some wacky design like that. A cool thing I can also do is Control I on the mask. Right, because these are not linked, I can do Control T and I can rotate this around so that it's now the white areas. Because I did Control I, you can see if I deselect and do Control I again, I've kind of rotated that. And as I rotate, I'm not actually rotating the layer, I'm rotating just the mask. And you can also see I'm kind of got the clipped edge there, so careful how I use this. But yeah, that's a handy few tips there. I'm going to show you a couple more things, so I'll just merge visible here. Because I've got a nice square document, I want to try and make this into some sort of tileable texture. Now it's already tileable because there's a lot of space here, but I don't really want that. I'm going to grab most of this, right? I'm just going to copy it, right? And that's all I'm going to do for now. I've copied it so it's somewhere in the clipboard. And I'm going to go to Filter, Other, Offset. And I know the document is 1024, so you can see it's already done 512 by 512. I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to paste this one down and I'll scale it up a bit. I've got a bit of room to play with. Right, you can see how it's clipping here. I'm just going to change the mode to Add, or you can use Screen. They're very similar, and it's going to merge down. Right, it's still in the clipboard. I'll do the Filter, Other, Offset. This time I'll do 256 so that it's quarter offset. 256 by 256. Right, and we can see it's already seamless. I'm just going to paste that down, change the mode to Add or Screen. So Add, Screen, not much difference. Let's do Screen, and I'm just going to rotate this. Make an effect like that, and I'll merge down. Right, and then do Filter, Offset. So again, it's done the 256 automatically. I'm going to scale this down, rotate it, change the mode to Additive, and merge down. And we now have a tileable texture. How can you tell it's tileable? Well, if you go to Image, Define Pattern, I'll call this Tile Test. Right, and we've got this in the, now it's a selectable pattern. If we go to down here and go to Pattern, and I'm going to choose the very bottom one is the most recent one I've made, and change the scale to 20%, so it's tiled like 5 times, and you can see how this tiles perfectly where they join. And that's how you can make a nice interesting pattern. I'm going to merge visible and do Control I to get different colors, Control U, change the saturation, darken it, things like that. Let's now copy that layer, so Control C, Control Shift V, or duplicate by dragging to the there, or Control J. They'll all duplicate the layer. But what I want to do now is a high pass filter, so Filter, Other, High Pass. And this is really good for like edge detection in a way, but you don't want to make it too high because it just goes back to normal. But if you bring this quite low like that, and then Control U to take the color out, and then change the mode of this to overlay, you get this kind of sharper effect, right? And if you do Control L on that layer, you can really tighten up that effect like so. You can see how I can make those glow a bit. And another thing I want to do, so I'm just going to merge visible, I'm going to drag this down and do Control L to make this very bright. Alright, like that, and I will make a mask. So the mask is just white, so everything that you see gets through, but if I make a black and white gradient in here, change this to basics, black and white, choose the second one, and just drag from the middle to the right a bit. And you'll see you get this kind of light fall off. If you alt click on the mask, you can see what's happening there. Go a bit further, and you get this kind of light source effect, which is cool. And I'm just going to click on the layer below and actually going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'll just blur this a little bit. And now this feels like a kind of focal point on this this kind of tile here, if you like. Merge visible. If you do Control T and Control Alt, I can shade this about. Control Alt and Shift, I can bring this that way, and just Shift can bring it down. Control Alt and Shift, bring this way out like that, and suddenly I've got this kind of perspective looking ground. And you could literally build up a room this way. I'll rotate this round. If you hold down Shift while you rotate, it will snap to 15 degrees or so. And that's just a nice way of getting kind of environment like that. I'm just going to add just a dark color there. You can see you get this kind of pseudo 3D type of room effect with the focal point there, and yeah, that's it really. I'm going to merge visible and Control U just to discotheque this. I can change the saturation and see how that looks, and you can also colorize to make it all like one tone. Another thing I like to do just before I leave this video is to duplicate the layer and do filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and bring this up a bit till you see it go past the edges. Good point. And then you can change this to add or overlay, right, or screen. And you can bring the opacity down. It just gives things a little bit of a lift and a glow. You can see it happening more at the edges there, right? And if you want, you can introduce the mask again. You might not want it everywhere, so you can kind of just do the lasso select with the polygon lasso like that. And because I've got that selected and I'm on the mask, I do Control I to invert its effect. And if I alt click on the mask, you can see what's happening here. It's a bit too sharp, so I'll just do a filter, blur on it. Okay, like that. Click on here again, you can see now if I shift click the mask, you can see this glow is only happening at the edges. And what I'll do is I'll increase this by doing Control L. I'll just bring this one down. You can see how that's making this kind of cool border. Right, and again on the mask, Control L, I can play with that cut-off point. Get a nice glow around the edges. You can use that for cool things like menu or text and anything really that you want to give a little bit of a bloom to the edges. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. You can also colorize that, change that to a different color, get even more tonal range out of it, all sorts of things like that. And let's maybe just choose that section there and Control L to lighten it up a bit. Now it definitely looks like a room, and you can put a doorway in there. I can maybe even find a door to put in, but I'll just delete that and then go to the layer below, do a little gradient fill like that, and we've got the spooky door. You could put a silhouette in there of some creature. But yeah, that's some nice little Photoshop tips and tricks that you can use for all sorts of things, from tiling to text to the masking techniques and additive effects and things like that for glows. Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoy using Photoshop. Feel free to comment anything that you want me to try and describe or give you an example of. Thanks for watching. Bye.